All right, the political analyst Sanusha Naidoo now joins us via Zoom to weigh in on developments around the ANC as, of course, we get closer to that elective conference. We talk about the ANC's image. Parliament is yet to debate the Section 89 independent panel report on the Phala Phala matter. The debate has been moved to Tuesday next week for a physical sitting. A very good afternoon to you, Sanusha. Always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for joining us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon, Flo. It's always a pleasure to be on the show with you and to the viewers.
You're most welcome. Let's talk about the ANC's image. A lot has been going on, particularly in the past couple of weeks. It seems that the image of the ANC continues to take a knock, and public trust again fading. What's your take on what has been going on the past few weeks?
The past few weeks, especially, I think it's, we're so seized with the Phala Phala issue and the panel report that we also have to recognize that this has been an existential challenge for the ANC in terms of brand image, in terms of its value proposition as the ruling party. It's been going through from one crisis to the other, and each crisis and each cleavage becomes even more intensified and acute and chronic than the previous one. And I think this again represents the kinds of challenges that the party as an organizational movement, but also as a organizational structure is grappling with in terms of the way in which its image is portrayed in the public domain, but also in terms of the point you raised around trust and the trust deficit, the constant battle lines and the constant challenges that it has to grapple with in terms of dealing with whether it's crisis around governance deficits, whether it's crisis around organizational deficits, crisis of whether it has an ethical moral compass. I mean, it just continues to deepen itself within this quagmire that it finds itself.
Just as we got interrupted there, I was talking about the fact that what I found particularly disturbing is some of the utterances by ordinary South Africans, where some are saying, well, we've kind of accepted that there is this corruption within the ANC. And even if President Cyril Ramaphosa is guilty of something, if not him, then who? And, some have said, better the one that you know, better the devil that you know than the one that you don't know. I mean, surely this can't be, the standard. This can't be what is acceptable to us as South Africans.
I think, Flo, the challenge we have is that the bar is so low in terms of where we are in the context of credible leadership, legitimate leadership, and just really good governance in the context. So when you look at how low the bar is, and I think also the point raised about, within the context of where the leadership construct is within the party as well, when you have these kinds of perceptions that flow within society as ordinary perceptions that people have and reactions to the situation, it makes one wonder in terms of the governance deficit that we have with the kind of leadership that we are dealing with. And I think this becomes a serious dilemma and a serious crisis and an existential crisis is when we go for the lowest denominator in terms of this, because the rest of the pool is just worse off than what we currently have. Yeah. And I think to a large extent, we've got to revisit a lot of our ways in which we define governance in a democracy and leadership in a democracy. I think the problem we also face in this whole question around, one person can actually bring the party to just around 50% or whatever, and if that person's not there, then the party tends to hemorrhage really badly, tells us that we have a serious deficit in the way that we think about governance and leadership within who can rule us and who has the credibility and the foresight to rule or to be president, and not to just rule in a sense of being top down, but also to have a sense of us as citizens being able to have that kind of vetting of who we think is a person that has the kind of characteristics to be able to lead, to be a president or to lead a country, but have a kind of collective responsibility as well.
Yeah, and I want to talk about these perceptions that you mentioned there, Sanusha. are we likely to see the effects of some of these negative perceptions impacting the ANC? And I'm talking about specifically, when it comes to national polls, when we're talking about 2024, for example. I mean, it has seemed, for the most part, that the leaders have been unscathed, and that people would continue, whether it's a blind loyalty, whatever it is, but continue voting for the party, regardless of what's happening or what their leaders are facing. What are your expectations there?
There's a lot of things that happen at elections. People check out. So you have one, based on the perceptions people find themselves in, is one of the common reactions of perceptions is that what will change? So will my vote make a difference? And once you start having that kind of internalization of your electoral system and of your voting right in terms of people checking out of the system or checking out in terms of whether their vote actually makes a substantive and significant change to the trajectory and the theory of change, or the democratic change that we want to see, or the consolidation of the democratic process itself, then that the one fear is that people check out democracy, or they check out of the election, they become apathetic because they don't see, not necessarily the ANC only, but they're looking around for other political parties in the opposition, and they feel, do they actually now represent the alternative? And I think that's also a discussion we need to have in terms of this leadership challenges and the discussion around electoral behavior in South Africa. Once you check out, the question is, if the ANC is losing the vote, and if those voters are not going anywhere else, they're checking out, and what's going to happen to that vote. Yeah. The second thing is, well, do I just vote because of blind loyalty? And I think that's a question of trying to understand that I vote for the ANC or I vote for a particular party because, again, the pool around me is so weak that I don't actually see the alternative there. So I'd rather just go with what I know, who I know, and basically the challenge of our democracy is that it's a very transactional democracy. It's all about come election time, the food parcels are handed out, suddenly people's roads are being prepared, potholes, which is supposed to be a serious service delivery intervention. Suddenly you've got one province going on a pothole drive. I mean, come on, these are just very, very cosmetic ways to try and buy the vote. And I think that becomes a critical dimension. And then thirdly, I think you've got people that start to think about their democracy, think about their vote, and this can actually impact, because one of the challenges we have in South Africa is that we don't have direct elections. We don't have a presidential election. We don't have a parliamentary election. We have a PR system which also camouflages and masks the reality of why the same political party gets in, but the vote in terms of the numbers tend to drop in terms of percentage.
All right, Sanusha, let's leave it there. As always, we appreciate your time and certainly your analysis here on SABC News. Thanks, ma'am.